Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Russell Tovey.
And I'm Robert Diamond.
This is Talk Art.
Welcome to Talk Art.
How are you today, Robert?
Today, Russell, I am feeling enigmatic, like the Mona Lisa.
What?
Yes, that's right. And I'm also feeling like my life is a mess like an unmade bed. And I'm also feeling plastic and showy.
Right.
Why would you think this is, Russell Tovey?
I've no idea, but you are all those things.
I am, actually, and I feel very seen by today's guests, plural, new album, because the lyrics are just the best lyrics they've ever had in the whole of their career. And this is their 15th studio album. They also have had live albums and numerous singles and loads of releases. But I'm blown away by this new album. I think it's the best one of their career. It is joyous. It's orchestral. Like every track has an orchestra on it. And it's got this levity, kind of like lightness and joy that I feel like is needed in the world right now. And it's also just cementing their genius, really, and their artistic prowess. And for me, they are legends of pop art. Even though their medium is music, not painting or sculpture, they really are consummate artists in every sort of way. And they've also collaborated with numerous artists over the decades. But there's something about their contribution to culture which is so rich, and it's like this, it's sort of part of the fabric of British history in many ways. And they are the most successful British UK duo ever in music. And they've sold over 50 million albums, and now they're going to sell a hell of a lot more, because this new record is their 15th album, but it's extraordinary. And I think it's going to really move a lot of people. And it comes out today. This is the celebration episode for the brand new album, nonetheless. So we would like to welcome to Talk Art Pet Shop Boys.
Hello.
Hi, Neil.
Hi. Well, how do we follow that?
Hi, Chris.
We don't need to say anything now, do we? Well, that's that then. Yeah, I agree with all of that.
We've wanted you guys on for so long, so thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having us on album release day.
Exactly. It's a big privilege and a serious joy.
Oh, we're pretending.
You've just given it away. This is how podcasts work. Yeah. This isn't live.
We've been very lucky because Murray gave us preview copies of the album, and I've listened to it numerous times.
Who is Murray?
Okay,
Murray Chalmers, PR.
Yeah.
PR.
Icon has worked with Yoko Ono, who you guys have also
worked with us only since 1985.
Only? Yeah, wow. That's like the whole of your career, pretty much. That's like a few years at the beginning.
He didn't do the first 6 months, I think. But, but then he came in, a young Scottish lad, fresh from Dundee, and he's been with us ever since.
Have you always had like loyalty like that to people you work with?
We do tend to have loyalty, one with each other, two with Murray, three, Mark Farrow has worked with us since the end of 1985 as well. Our manager, Angela Becker, has only been with us for 15 years, but actually she's our longest-running manager. So, yeah, we do tend to have quite long relationships with people.
How long has this album been sort of manifesting?
Since lockdown. So that's 4 years now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So in 2020, I was in my house in Kent. Chris was in his house. And we started sending each other stuff. Chris persuaded me to start programming, which I've never done before.
Right.
So it's a sort of old dogs learning new tricks thing. So I started programming on GarageBand, something I previously tried to get. I was trying to get rid of all the Apple things on my computer. But anyway, I had managed to get rid of it. So I bought a 70 quid keyboard and I looked at a little tutorial and started doing it, so Chris could send things like a Bavoglan, etc., etc. And then, of course, that whole COVID thing pretty much took up 2 years, didn't it? So over those 2 years, we wrote a lot of songs. We also wrote a theatre piece called Naked, based on the Emperor's New Clothes.
But you were never together at any of these moments?
Do you remember you were allowed to meet in the garden?
Yeah.
We had tea in the garden once.
Do you live near each other?
In the countryside, we live about half an hour away from each other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Probably longer in London.
Because he's in the East End and I'm in the West. So it is longer, actually. Yeah, it is longer.
Yeah.
We did. By the following year, you could meet up, of course. We did meet up. But it was a very sort of prolific writing period.
I think I came to see you at one point in Kent when you moved there. And
you sold me a painting.
Oh, that's right. I did.
Yeah.
And I brought it to your house.
And you hung it.
Did you have a stash in your car?
Always. I
You
always
and
carry
Carl-
around
you and Carl
paintings.
Freeman came
Yeah,
round.
I think you'd like
that's
this
right.
one, Neil. How about this?
We came round and you just started doing demos on your keyboard. I remember
That's
you
it,
saying to me,
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
this album, is it?
Yeah, so
That's
that
wild.
was probably a few months into it then.
Wicked.
And then, by the end of 2021, I was going to keep a sort of playlist of what we've been doing. I thought, oh, great, we've got enough songs for the new album. And then we wrote another song, which is the first track in the album, actually, Loneliness. And then we decided to think about what producer to work with.
I like this idea of the painting turning up and being hung and then deciding if you're going to buy it or not.
No.
I'd already bought it.
You'd already bought it.
I'd already bought it.
I think we were free delivery.
You were free delivery.
We came
Well, they're
with it.
also in Kent, although there are long... People forget how big Kent is.
Yeah, it's so true.
Because people are saying, oh, Margate. And I say, yeah, live nowhere near it. Easier to get to from London.
From actually being in Kent,
Yeah.
Because Kent's
I know,
huge.
well, Margate's easy to get to from London. But
And it
from
is from
me,
where you are, right.
it's a pain actually to get to. That's why I'm hard over there, because it's actually a real pain to get there.
The new album has a really particular sound to it, and it's got a simplicity to it, like a purity, which is so refreshing. It feels like there's so much space within it sonically. Was that something you thought about, like, immediately from those demos?
Well, that's something that James Ford, the producer, brings. He's got a room full of old analog synths, and they're all programmed. There's no samples. He uses old drum machines and stuff like that. Actually, he also plays real drums, bass occasionally. Those early keyboards come with a lot of warmth, and also the way James has arranged them is quite minimal. It leaves a lot of space for all the various sounds, so they've all got room, and I think that's why it sounds so fresh.
Yeah, totally.
Do you have moments when you really reflect on this partnership? Have you allowed yourself over the years to reminisce? Obviously you have, but to sit there and go, the serendipity of you two meeting and what become of that, does that blow your mind now, having this like historical view of what you've achieved?
We only really talk about it when we're being interviewed.
Right. You don't with each other, you don't reminisce about...
We reminisce about things like our first manager, Tom Watkins, who sadly died just before lockdown, I think. Although we weren't in communication with him. But I think when someone dies, you remember the good bits. There were lots of good bits with Tom. He was a big guy, fantastically camp, very outspoken.
He'd have been cancelled in today's culture.
Oh, amazed he wasn't cancelled in his culture. But no, he was... And he was great. People always say, what did you learn from Tom Watkins? And I always have the same answer, interior decoration. Tom's a great interior decorator.
Not a great manager.
He got us the deal with EMI, and we signed this deal, and we had a lawyer, and she said, this is a terrible management deal. You shouldn't really sign it. And I said, well, I'm going to recommend we do sign it because Tom's going to get us a deal with EMI, and if we don't do this, the whole thing could just fade away. And so we signed with Tom, and it tainted our relationship from the beginning because it wasn't financially really... I mean, we knew we were signing, but it wasn't really
in the early
fair.
days, you'll do anything to get a record.
Yeah.
And I think that's true of
Yeah.
almost every artist, which is why they always get screwed at the beginning of their career.
Yeah, anybody creative. The amount of things I did for free as a young actor.
Yeah.
Just turning up and going, I'll do it. I don't mind. I'll pay myself to get here.
Yeah.
Because you want to work and you want to achieve something.
Yeah, because he was saying, wasn't he like taking something like 20% of the recording costs?
You got 20% of the gross.
Yeah.
So, for instance, we got quite a large advance when we signed to EMI, with actually £300,000, which is a lot of money in 1985.
Yeah.
But the album, so Tom got £60,000. So we are now £360,000 in debt. The album cost £200,000 to make, whereas Tom had made £60,000 immediately. So that's the way that. So, but we knew that when we signed it, and
So you took on his debt, like his...
No, he just got, when we signed, he got 20%, so he got 20% of £30,000, £300,000. But the album cost £200,000 to make. But I mean, obviously, the album did well and what have you. But it meant we were never going to re-sign with him. But at the same time, he was fun. He was fun. He did have an interior decoration company. He liked kind of 1920s and 30s art and collected, Clarice Cliff and all that stuff.
Yeah, all the ceramics.
All the ceramics. And like things like Eric Gill. And all that was quite new to us, someone who actually collected art. And he was... And I had a house... a couple of years later that he sort of did up really quickly because I had a friend who was dying of AIDS, sadly, and I wanted and I bought the house so he could live in it for part of the time. Anyway, Tom did it up. He was always coming around to my house with arts and crafts, ceramics, and Royal Doulton pots.
But did you like all that, or did he sort of force it on you?
No, I thought, yeah, that's great, because I still like arts and crafts actually, and so that was the sort of thing you learned from Tom.
Yeah.
Actually, I think he learned quite a lot of the music industry from us, because I worked at Smash Hits, so I knew, well, from the press side anyway, about the music industry. But he was for fun, and then of course Bros came along. He managed Bros, and then our 5 years was up, and we moved on, and Bros sort of imploded. Yeah. But then he had E17, and they did West End Girls. Anyway, so
he pushed arts and crafts onto you. But Chris, did you ever absorb any of the sort of ceramics and?
No, I wasn't on the receiving end of all of that. He was very good. Actually, one thing I did learn from him was built-in wardrobes.
Oh, wow. And do you still have built-in wardrobes today?
His big thing in the 80s was a framework of, I suppose now it would be MDF.
Yeah.
But in front of it, he would put blinds. It's very 80s, the whole thing.
Well, to be fair, it was the
80s.
Yeah. Yeah, so that makes sense.
He had the zeitgeist.
Did you two always have a very clear vision about how you wanted to present yourselves through photography at the time and then music videos? Because obviously you were at the era, the same time as people like Madonna, who ended up using videos as a way to kind of transport the music to another dimension and globally, internationally.
Well, we came up halfway through the 80s, so that had been going since approximately 78, really. I mean, when was I Don't Like Mondays?
Early, it's true.
When was I Don't Like Mondays by Boomtown Rats?
Yeah.
I mean, Adam Ant is 79, 80.
And even Kate Bush. I mean,
Kate Bush?
Yeah, 77.
So all of that, David Bowie, Let's Dance, 83. So that was a sort of a given. That whole thing had happened by the time we came on. The whole Duran Spandau Culture Club thing around the world in America, etc., had happened. So we were the next wave that mixed dance music with pop music. So our influences were early hip hop, the records made by Alpha Baker, particularly, like Africa Bambaataa.
Yeah.
Also, what we used to call high energy, was just starting to be called high energy, which is sort of gay disco. And then, of course, obviously pop music was as well. And also the electronic scene, like particularly maybe Kraftwerk, but also Soft Cell. Was one of the first things we ever talked about, actually, when we first met, was Bedsitter by Soft Cell. So all of those things were our sort of influences.
And that was in a shop, wasn't it? Like you were buying a synth and Chris spotted you, was that right?
No, I had a synthesizer. And when I got it home, this little Korg MS-10 synthesizer, I think I thought it had speakers in it. By the way, I would do the same now. The same now. And I thought, you can't get a sound out of it. And so I realised I had a very typical 1970s stereo system. And so I went to Chelsea record stores, which is an electronic shop on the King's Road, and I still live near it. Anyway, the man at the shop, I told him what the issue was, and he said, you need a jack going into, I forgot what you call the two-prong thingy. And so he went round the back, and there was a smell of welding, and he made this for me. And in this moment, Chris walked in, and the shop the counter was unserved because the man was welding a plug for me. And actually, when I went home, it did indeed work, And so we kind of met over the synthesizer.
And did you swap phone numbers at that point, or?
No, we didn't.
People didn't have phones then.
So how did you How did you have that one?
No, I had a phone call. I had a phone.
Did you? I didn't.
Yeah, no, you phoned me up one.
A landline.
It used to be. You forget how hard it used to be making a phone call.
So
because I was living in Chelsea as well.
You used to go to the phone box.
None of them worked. If I was phoning home, it would take me. I had to follow at least an hour to wander around all of Chelsea trying to find a phone box that worked. Communication was not easy then, but quite good in many ways as well.
Yeah, that's true. Trying to avoid people. But then, so you had a phone call, and then how long did it take for you guys to sort of connect in a way where you realised that you'd creatively be able to make something?
Well, quite quickly, because the synthesizer was new, and of course Chris was a keyboard player. I mean, I could play the piano a little bit, and I had a guitar, an acoustic guitar, and so Chris played the keyboard, the synthesizer, which is a monophonic, one note at a time. And so we started, and I was played the chords on the guitar. So that's how we started.
And we hit things as well, didn't we, for drums?
We hit things for drums, yeah.
Hit cabinets and things like that.
It was all very,
Away in wardrobes.
We're very avant-garde.
very,
Even
as we
now.
always have been, yes.
And you do this in each other's living rooms?
No,
Ben?
my studio flat, yeah.
And when did the name come together?
You're calling it a studio flat, yeah.
Well, it had, because it was one room with a kitchen and bathroom, whereas you were in a bedsit.
I was in bedsitter lounge.
You were the classic bedsit.
Yeah.
If you want to know what Chris's flat bedsit was like, just listen to Bedsitter by Softel, because
Yeah.
that's what it was.
Yeah, it had bright blue and bright orange walls.
Did you paint them yourself?
No, that's how it came.
This is
shared
before Tom
bathroom.
Watkins.
Yeah.
Okay, this is before the built-in wardrobes came in.
One ring
Hob.
which I used to make Heinz sausage and beans. I don't
All in the same tin.
Oh,
think
all
I
out
even
the
had
can.
Yeah, everything had to come out one tin.
Yeah.
I don't think I even had a toaster.
I don't think you did. No.
How did you guys know to come to London? Was that a thing of being gay, or was that a thing of music? What was the pull? I'm sorry, I'm you're giving me a look there like, how dare you? Dare you?
Russell, you just outed our guest.
Yeah, nobody knows. Nobody
Many
knows.
genders.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I came to London. I did my A-levels.
Did you pass them?
I did.
A stars. They weren't
No,
even
I didn't.
invented.
I
They
did
even
three-
invented the A star. Then.
I only did 3 A-levels: history, English, literature, and economics. I didn't get
Well, they
economics.
served you well, didn't they?
But I got an O-level past economics. I was quite pleased. Gave me another O-level because I never really knew what was going on in it. History, of course, I've always been pretty good at. Although I only got a B, didn't get an A, and I got a C in English literature.
You've made it for it now, don't you?
I've made it.
He's got honorary this, honorary that. Have you got a doctorate? He's a doctor.
I've got an honorary. I've only got one thing, Chris. I've got an honorary doctorate from Durham University.
What for?
Doctor of Letters,
Letters.
Yes.
Not numbers.
not numbers.
It's pretty chic coming from Durham. That's like
He
intelligentsia.
turned down a few before he
Oh,
accepted
well
that
done.
one. He
Smash
wasn't going to get it from one of the lesser universities.
Have you not been given any honour?
Have I? I nearly swore then.
You can swear.
I can't swear.
You can. We love
Listen to
swearing.
it.
We love swearing.
Have I heck?
How do you feel about that then?
Well, I wouldn't accept it anyway. So
Wouldn't
they probably
you?
know me better than that.
You wouldn't want those
I'd be like,
letters
what,
after your
what are you
name.
doing? I'm going to turn up for that.
Didn't you get something? You went to your old school once or something.
I was at school and I'd already left. I got the music prize.
No,
And I was really annoyed about having to go to that as well.
No, I thought you went to something. Oh, you opened a school building.
Oh.
You cut the ribbon.
Yes.
Oh my God, that's
I
glamorous.
made a speech. I did the whole thing, and then about a year later, the school closed.
No.
After you'd opened
And they
it.
didn't offer, I didn't even get my plaque.
Oh, because it said Chris Lowe opened the school.
Opened by Chris Lowe. It should say closed
Closed the
by.
school a year
Oh, you had
later.
a plaque.
Yeah.
Was that the Queen?
I know, it was. It was very much like
A
that.
little curtain.
Anyway, next year, school's gone.
Oh my God, that's so
Talk
funny.
about the curse of the Pet Shop
Yeah.
Boys. It's famous.
We'll talk about Pet Shop Boys, the name then. Where did that actually come from?
Chris was at Liverpool University when we met, doing a year's work experience, and then at the end of that year, he went back to Liverpool and used to come back to London. We would carry on writing songs. We were using a someone's studio at this point, but he used to stay in a house in Ealing, and the guys that lived there had 3 student friends who worked at a pet shop, and they were known as the Pet Shop Boys. And that is, no one believes it, but I'm afafraid it's the truth.
And were they aware that they were then...
They did
the
know.
title
They,
for
no, they
your-
did know. But we used to say, oh, they should, because it sounded to us like a rap band. Because there was the group called the New York City Peach Boys, who were very sort of cool. I think the Beastie Boys had just started, and we'd made our first record in New York by this point. We didn't have a name, and so the boys thing was a lot of rap outfits were called something boys, and so we thought Pet Shop Boys sounded like a funny English rap group, which
like
said,
the
goes, we
Beastie
sort of
Boys
were.
or something.
Yeah, like
right,
that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then when we did our first interview, plugging the first single, which came out actually 40 years ago this month, West End Girls, Betty Page at the Record Mirror, phoned up, and she said, oh, well, Neil, we all know where you got their name from. And I said, yeah, no, Chris had these friends who worked in a pet shop. She goes, Neil, we all know. And I said, what? And she said, it's it's a practice in New York where people were involving hamsters.
You have to lower the tone, don't you?
And I was absolutely horrified.
Do you know what? When I was a kid, when I was about 11 or something, I liked a Pet Shop Boys song, and people at school were like, that they told me
You're
that
into
story.
hamsters.
Yeah, they told me that
There was a
I got
famous Hollywood
bullied.
actor that was apparently
Yes, it was,
into hamsters.
Oh no, don't, Russ!
But
Oh my God!
Why can we not mention it?
No.
No, actually, the
It's
story.
libel. It's libel, but it's.
Oh, it's
Like,
libel.
the
Allegedly.
story actually passed from us.
I don't believe anyone
onto
does that.
a famous one. I think it's an urban myth. In fact, I'm sure it's an urban myth. Maybe we got lumbered with it, and actually, to be honest, it's sort of gone away more or less. But it's a total.
Well, it had done until just now.
Now we brought it up.
Hashtag.
Hashtag gerbil.
Thanks for reminding us all about that, Neil.
Well, he was asking where the name came from.
Oh my God!
Was it very hard to stay true to your sound once you'd signed with a label? Was there a lot of pressure at the time to please many people?
No. We had a surprising amount of confidence. We probably thought they were all a bit hopeless in a way, because we thought we knew the sort of the sound of the recent future, the coming future was going to be, which was this mixture of hip-hop and gay disco. Actually, we weren't, as it happened, we weren't wrong.
No.
And
But you defined it.
yeah, and then the first single, so with Tom Watkins, we signed to EMI, and the first single was a huge flop. Let's spend lots of money. But then we did Western Girls and went to number one around the world. And then we could sort of do, as it was, the credit went to us. We'd worked with a producer called Stephen Hague. The record company and Tom Watkins did not want us to work with. Stephen Hague had done a record I still like called Hey You, the Rocksteady Crew. It was a pop, sort of pop rap record, but also he'd worked with Malcolm McLaren on Madame Butterfly, which is a good record. And we'd had this idea that we wanted our sound to be cinematic, and so West End Girls, the hit version, starts with someone walking down the street. It's like the sort of a film, and that was a big idea we had. And so, to be fair to us and to be fair to them, we got the credit for choosing the people to work with and all the rest of it.
Right.
And so they let us get on with it, really. Every now and then there'd be complaints about the first album cover, Please, had a tiny photograph with the name Tiny, and Please in tiny letters. But, and it was very minimalist. Tom Watkins wanted us to do something very maximalist because it was the 80s. And but once we'd proved ourselves, people pretty much let us get on with it.
Where did that come from, that kind of desire to have a tiny image? Because I feel like from the get-go, your aesthetic, that's what I was trying to say before, like the way you presented yourself, not just in photography, but also through typography or album sleeve design, was so specific. And when you look back at the whole career, it's this really cohesive artistic statement.
Yes.
And no one else was doing that at the time. And I really remember all the small images and like the single titles for albums, and just everything you've done is very specific.
Well, Chris was a qualified architect. I'd worked in publishing, so I had sort of thought about it, even though I didn't know much about it really. And also we worked with a photographer called Eric Watson.
Yes, I'd like to talk loads about him. I don't think he gets enough credit.
Well, I mean, we always give him credit, but Eric I knew was the boyfriend of a friend of mine from Newcastle, and he was from Newcastle, and he came down to London, went to Haunty Art College, and at the end,
Makes that clear that your friend was a girl.
my friend was a girl. Yes.
People might
She still is.
Imagine if people thought that Eric was a legs in the air screamer. He wouldn't be happy about that.
No, he wouldn't. Anyway, so Eric, when we first recorded in New York with Bobby Orlando, Eric offered to take some pictures of us, and by this point, I'm at Smash Hits, and Eric is taking photographs of Smash Hits, and we did a photo session with him, and then we got released. The first Western Girls released on Epic Records because Eric played it to the A&R man. In fact, they signed us to one single deal.
Whoa.
And then dropped us. And so we always sort of had the deal that Eric would do the videos because he'd never done videos. And so we had quite a strong career, not just with him, but relationship with Eric for about 5 years, really. And right at the beginning of the EMI contract, we spent a lot of time and money doing photo sessions, and we discussed the ideas. And again, we wanted to look like film stills was our big idea in the mid '80s, and they sort of did actually. And so that was quite an important relationship about defining the way we looked. And also Mark Farrow came in at the end of '85. That's right after West End Girls, and he'd worked a bit at Factory. And I think Chris's tastes particularly were quite minimal. And so, and also we liked, with the first album cover, we were outrageously minimal. It was a white square with a tiny photograph.
I know, it actually feels radical. Like, when you look back at what everyone else was doing, I know it does. It feels totally radical and unique.
We were partly doing it to wind everyone up. Tom Watkins has spent months saying, I've got the idea for the album, it's amazing, it's paper engineering, it's got 64 flaps you fold. And he got us this thing to about half an hour to get the album out. And that was a great thing about our relationship with Tom. There was a lot of negative energy, but so we reacted. So what we did was a postage stamp picture of us on a big white square.
Yeah, and all the other photos were on the inside.
On the inside.
So you would sit with Eric and work out what your image would be.
That probably sounds more planned than it was, but yeah, we sort of did. Like, for instance, in West End Girls, I've got this long coat on. Well, Eric had the coat first. Whereas Chris always had a stronger sense of style because he liked the sort of street clothes.
Well, we noticed this because we were looking back at loads of the photos. I know there was a National Portrait Gallery exhibition of your photos, like I don't know what part of the gallery it was in, but it was like a small presentation.
It was, yeah, they called it a display.
A display,
yes.
Exactly. But it was really beautiful, and we were looking at it, and every single picture, your outfits, Chris, are totally incredible. Like, you had such cool style, like you'd still do, but it's really interesting to see that.
Modesty forbids.
No, but where did that come from? Were you always someone that expressed themselves through what you wore?
Well, no. The first time we were doing a photo session, we went shopping with the stylist Ian R. Webb, who I think is still working.
Yes, he is.
And I thought, great, get some good clothes out of this. So we were shopping, and first thing I wanted was a chain.
Yes, a gold chain.
I thought, not really necessary.
Well,
but
Ian R. Webb was driven mad by Chris. All he wanted was a gold chain.
So I got a gold chain out of it. And then,
Did you get one?
Yeah, I got a gold chain.
It was budget gone.
It was featured in the photograph.
Okay, yes.
And then so it was just great.
What were the brands?
Actually, nothing's really changed. I mean, we were out shopping the other day because we had to do some.
Yeah, two of us went out shopping.
So we just nipped down Bond Street. We've always bought our own clothes, actually. I mean, apart from when you're doing a specific setup, like when we worked with
Tim Walker.
That
on the album cover.
That was all styled by their stylist. But if we're just doing other stuff, it's just a great opportunity to go shopping. When we first went to Japan, wow, that was amazing.
Well, we realised early on, and Eric Watson realised as well, that actually we had a thing that became sort of the brand. I would wear smart clothes and Chris would wear street clothes. And that actually literally just came out of what we liked. And that's pretty much still the case. It was exactly...
It is the case, because you're here in like Issey Miyake's structured suit jacket, and you're in like an Adidas
Chris could literally have been wearing that 40 years ago, to be honest.
There's a shot in the Rent video directed by Derek Jarman of me getting off the train at King's Cross. And I got off the train yesterday at Euston, dressed exactly the same, with the same bag over my shoulder. It was literally me, 40 years later?
Almost 40 years later.
40 years later. And I thought, literally nothing's changed.
Well, the style that Eric Watson created with you guys was described as shiny pop and crumbling decay, which kind of really fits with the state of England at the time. And it really makes me think of Derek Jarman as well, and what he was capturing.
That's very much... well, Derek didn't do shiny pop, but he did crumbling decay. And also, for instance, Chris just mentioned King's Cross. King's Cross, we're actually recording this near King's Cross.
Yeah.
King's Cross was really decayed. We used to go to a bar here, really near here, called Traffic. And it was one of those gay bars where all the windows were covered over. It looks really scary. But then you went in, it was fine. And this area was quite scary, I think. And I remember when they were doing this up, I couldn't believe they'd ever make King's Cross fashionable, because it was, it was all drug dealers and stuff, and
a lot of prostitutes.
A lot of prostitutes.
It was hilarious because they'd all be lined up waiting for the bus. The bus would pull up, The bus would drive off and they'd still all be there queuing.
They'd never get on the bus.
They'd never get on the bus. Because I used to live just around the corner, so I was very aware of it.
But you guys were so much more culturally aware than so many of your peers at that time, which must have, like saying you're working with Derek Jarman, to be aware of that. Was that something you were aware of, or that I know that just is innate to you, but was you aware that was setting you above all your peers?
We didn't set out to be above or below anyone. We set out right from the beginning to be our own thing, to create our own world, so that we didn't have to compete with anyone else either. We were only really competing with ourselves. And that, again, is true today. You know, I've said a gazillion times, I sort of see the whole thing as just an artwork that gets bigger and bigger. What we do. And people come in and out of it, like Derek Jarman or Liza Minnelli or someone. And it's just like a giant artwork that keeps it like a big mural or something that's just expanding. Rather than you were trying to compete with Spandau Ballet or whatever, or Erasure or something at the time. Although, of course, we were always, and still are, interested in pop music. But we were sort of our own reference point in a way. Or our reference points came from outside pop music, came from architecture and maybe films a bit. And, of course, theatre, which is a difficult reference point. In a lot of rock people sort of don't like theatre. And you know, Chris's mother was an actress and a dancer, and his father was famously in a comedy jazz band called the Nitwits. And so they had a sort of grandfather, sorry. And so they had a sort of, he comes from a show business background, which I didn't. But even in my family, my grandfather on my mother's side loved musical theatre and would put on pantomimes and things. So again, and I went to the People's Youth Theatre in Newcastle when I was a kid. So we both had something of that. And also, and you like David Bowie. David Bowie sort of hasn't gone in history as theatrical, but actually, the beginning of the 80s, so if you look at the previous 10 years of David Bowie, you've gone from Ziggy Stardust, with all of that, to David Bowie walking down the beach at Pet Level, wherever it is, dressed as a clown. So it's very theatrical. And also, you've just had Grace Jones's one-man show. We've all seen that arena film Al Yentob made about David Bowie when he was touring Diamond Dogs in America. And so we wanted to do something theatrical. That took years before we got that together. But we didn't tour before we could do that.
I know, but I loved that. That's like a story that I always tell people, is that you guys never did tours or gigs, really, until you went on that first tour, until you got it exactly how you wanted it, like as a show, as a kind of something very meaningful. And I think it really sums up so much about what you do. There's like a level of excellence in a way that it has to be very precise. You don't just like do a gig in a pub. You know what I mean? There's like there's this very like deliberate choice about the way you guys express yourselves.
Yeah. Well, it's just, you know, I mean, it's amazing if a young band come up and they just go in a pub and they've got a very charismatic lead singer and the whole thing's amazing.
We have done that on occasion.
You have?
We do. We played in Camden.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? They're great gigs, those. I can understand the appeal.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, I really enjoyed them. But our first big gig was something that we waited to do until we could afford to do exactly what we wanted.
Exactly.
So our first major gig was at the Budokan in Tokyo, and then Wembley Arena in London. So we sort of went right in at the top level, which was
it's so cool. And the films in that live show were Derek Jarman collaboration.
Well, Derek actually directed the whole show. So Derek made films and he brought in his costume designer. But we'd done a video.
Sandy Powell, didn't he?
Yes, who did the
It's a Sin.
And I remember going to a meeting in Dungeness with my sister because she was staying with me on a Sunday, on a lovely afternoon, and we were having tea outside and just going through Derek was going through all the ideas for his costume designer for the show. And that was great. And then he made these films. Derek was very excited because he made these Super 8 films that were blown up he said, had never been done before. I'm not very good at film.
The projections and
70 millimeter.
the background.
They're blown up to 70 millimeter.
Yeah, so the whole thing's on YouTube. So
it is on YouTube.
Projections.
Yeah. And they're beautiful films, particularly the one for King's Cross is really, really gorgeous. And there's a lovely one for Heart with just people dancing, and Derek comes in right at the end, so you see Derek. But also, we'd just done a video with Eric Watson in Los Angeles where we had these two dancers, Casper and Cooley, who had taught Michael Jackson to break dance.
Whoa.
Anyway, we decided they would be in, and they had 4 other dancers, and then they came over to London. We put the whole show together in a rehearsal studio, and it was really, we were all winging it a bit, and we had Courtney Pine playing saxophone.
Whoa.
Really, so something would happen to cover the costume changes. And so, for instance, off the first section of the show,
We didn't tell him that, did we?
well, no, he played on a record we'd made with Dusty Springfield. Nothing's been proved. And then he played on Liza Minnelli's album as well. And he was a great guy. He was a fantastic guy, and he was a great musician, obviously. And so he was able to improvise and stuff. And he also was quite interested in saxophone, going through electronics. And then we put all this together, and we had Pierre Laroche doing the makeup, who did the Aladdin Sane Flash.
Oh, whoa.
Unfortunately, we all flew to, but Derek couldn't go because a friend of his was ill. And we all flew to Hong Kong for the first gig. Wow. And when we got there, Pierre Laroche was ill on the plane. And, it was like 1989, and he had to go back to England. He was diagnosed with AIDS, and it was really, he lived for 2 or 3 years longer, but that was a pretty heavy thing to happen right at the beginning of the tour. But his makeup was amazing, and he was a wonderful person to work with. And anyway, the whole thing went off pretty well. I don't know, the sound was very good, but then we came back.
Well, what did your dad say about it?
My father came to Wembley Arena and came backstage.
Never want to mince his words.
And said, "Oh, it sounded terrible."
That was the first words he said.
Oh, it sounded terrible.
Oh, no.
To be honest, I think he was right there. So
Yeah, well, actually, we've worked on the sound a lot.
we've worked. The next tour, the sound is 1,000,000 times better.
How did you become aware of Derek? Is it because of the films?
Derek Jarman in the 80s was pretty famous.
Right.
Derek Jarman was famous in the late 70s. When Derek's film Sebastiane, the first film ever to be shot in Latin, came out and was full of male nudity and stuff, was on the gate, Notting Hill Gate, for ages. Everyone it was very, very time out, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Derek was... And then Mrs. Thatcher came along. Derek was kind of like a leader of opposition to Thatcher.
Yeah.
Which was quite interesting. So we always have this discussion, but people always think of the 80s as being loads of money. Well, I think that was the 90s. Because in the 80s, there were still people doing, fringe theatre cooperatives and Spandau Ballet having their clothes made for them, Boy George, same sort of thing. It was quite a do-it-yourself period, really. And Derek was like that. Derek could make a movie. And the reason we brought him in to do that tour is because Derek could really make a little money go a long way. We were doing a tour of 8 gigs.
He never had more than like 10 grand in his bank his whole life.
No. And in one of his diaries, he complains that the video for It's a Sin costs more than he would make a movie with. But
he made It's a Sin, then.
But he made It's a Sin.
That's his fault. Then.
Yes.
Who should have complained to himself about that, shouldn't he?
Well,
it was his budget.
We wanted that. But this all came about because we were mixing It's a Sin in Amvision Studios, and Channel 4 was showing Caravaggio.
Wow.
And it was on the screen in the TV with the sound down. And we thought, we should get him to do it. My recollection is it's probably exaggeration, but he came down around the next day or the day after. And he thought...
Did you ever meet him?
No,
neither of us.
He died in 94, didn't he? And I was born in 81.
He had so much exuberance and energy and positivity, and he was the most incredible person.
I remounted Blue. We did Blue and took it around as a live performance.
Well, the first time I saw Blue, I saw the first performance sitting next to Derek.
Oh, my God.
And he was sort of chuckling throughout it. Because Blue has got a lot of very dark
Actually, he did
humour.
have an infectious laugh, didn't he?
He did, had a great laugh.
Yeah, it's very
Very
Hangman's humour, completely, and irony, and
but just sort of funny as well, And he came up in that early 70s era. Andrew Logan, Alternative Miss World, a lot of dressing up, and it's sort of a lot of fun as well.
I sort of miss all of that, unless it's going on and we don't know about.
Well, we have a song. in the new album,
Called-
the new Bohemia.
The new
That was
Bohemia.
clever,
See how I
Neil.
did that? See how I did
Love that. Very classy.
Liza Minnelli once told us, whatever you're doing, you should always get it back to what you're trying to sell.
Oh, she was shameless.
Is that her advice?
She was shameless at it.
That's
though.
great
If you watch
advice.
any interview,
So Liza Minnelli, when we did the album with her, she's doing promotion. Of course, all anyone wants to talk about is her mother. And she wants to plug the album, and so there someone say, "Oh, but Judy Garland," she goes, "Yeah, well, it's like when I was with the Pet Shop Boys." But the thing is, she's right about that. And I forgot what I was saying.
The new Bohemia.
The new Bohemia. That's a song missing the fact that Bohemian life, it does exist, of course, in sort of Dalston or somewhere, but it's not as. We used to be one time we were sort of part of a scene like that, and now I don't think we are. It's sort of genuinely missing that. It's not just about me or us either, but it is, you sort of miss that kind of culture. Everything now goes, well, it's been the case for so long anyway.
back then, though, we were out every night, so we would have been aware of anything. And these days, we don't go out as much. So it's probably just the fact we don't really go out all the time.
I think I met you when I was like 17, 18, starting to go out to gay nights, like at Rebel.
You shouldn't have been allowed in at that.
Well, I always found... Well,
I knew we should have brought in ID cards.
I should have been, to be honest, but I always found that, gay venues helped young gay people get in when in a regular pub they would have been turned away, where there was this sort of solidarity and this community that I always felt like they knew I was too young, but they were going to let me in because otherwise what else am I going to do? And I found that them club nights were like that. And I remember you being incredibly generous and just like really social.
Doesn't sound like me. Sure, it was me.
It was you. And then I think we met after the History Boys.
We did, yes.
We met after History
You're
Boys.
very good in that, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
That was like 20 years ago this year.
The History Boys thing was really funny because I was in Also one night.
That was 20 years ago.
Yeah, it was
20 years ago this year.
God.
I know.
I was in this restaurant also when I went to the loo. When I came out the loo, Alan Bennett was standing outside and he said, "Oh, Neil, I just wanted to thank you.
That's a pretty good impersonation.
I just wanted to thank you for letting me use your song in my new play." And I said, "Well, that's fantastic, Alan, but I don't know anything about it." He said, "It's the sins at the end of Act 2. And I said, "Well, I'm thrilled, but I don't know anything about it. That's great, but don't worry, that's great." Anyway, so he invited us to the press night.
Press night. I remember seeing you out in the audience.
Of the History Boys. And afterwards there was a sort of, budget National Theatre drink up. And
Budget, yeah.
and we met you, and we met Dominic, James Corden.
Correct.
A lot of people came out of that, didn't they?
Yeah.
What's his face, who I just saw playing Benjamin Britten in Stratford? Maybe. I can't remember his name, that's the problem.
Sam Barnett?
Sam Bonnet.
Sam
yes.
Barnett, okay.
Yeah. And it was really quite... And then you all toured, didn't you, for
We
years?
did. We went like 9 months
Yeah.
around the world, ended up on Broadway.
Yeah.
But you weren't happy because my character sings "It's a Sin,"
Oh, was that you? Yes.
and then one of the other
Says,
lads
"It's
go,
shit."
"It's
Yeah.
shit." You were like, "Oh, you said it to me afterwards." I'm like, "I didn't say that."
Oh my God.
Anyway, luckily it got replaced by, was it Morrissey or the Smiths for the
Headmaster.
film?
Something
For
like
the
yeah,
film,
something
yeah.
Were you
like
in the
that.
film as well?
Yeah. But that didn't make the film that bit. I
No, it
don't think,
didn't.
and it didn't make the tour.
Oh, it
because they had to
didn't
take
even-
some time
oh.
off to tour it.
Yeah.
But that song has been culturally, I mean, going back to like Derek Jarman directing it, but It's a Sin has been so important for so many generations. And even now, with the It's a Sin TV show and then All of Us Strangers, your music, you find like these new generations are discovering you over the last 40 years. That must feel incredible.
I suppose so, yes. I think we've noticed it in the last few months because of Saltburn and All of Us Strangers. They sing Rent in Saltburn. And it's actually like part of the plot.
Which Derek also directed, Rent. Did he?
Derek directed Rent too, yes.
Yeah.
And that does feel nice. I mean, from our perspective, we've just sort of always been here. We're always doing something. So we never make a comeback, we never go away. But you notice you have phases where you appear to be more in than you were and stuff like that. But I don't know. But it's nice, yeah. It's really nice when people like you. And
Yeah, you can't be in control of that.
no, you're not in control
yeah.
of it, so you just sort of go with it.
Right.
And also, I think when there comes a point where you've been around for such a long time, it's now 40 years since West End Girls, that people just sort of accept that you exist. You kind of become like the Rolling Stones. It's interesting that we talked to Guardian. They put the headline "Music is no longer ageist," so they made a big thing of it. It was just a throwaway comment, but it's true actually that younger people will listen to music by old people, which 40 years ago they wouldn't have done.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think there's more access now, isn't there?
I think there's a thing that the history of pop and rock music and soul music and all the rest of it is so amazing. The catalogue, this enormous, ever-growing catalogue of songs, is such an amazing creative achievement that's come from musicians and songwriters. And, it didn't really... that have entered the popular consciousness. It's an incredible thing. And so I think people respect and enjoy the old catalogues of pop music, whereas our generation probably didn't listen to the 1930s or 40s or something.
No, yeah.
Whereas nowadays you will listen to the Sex Pistols or the Smiths.
I also think there's like a solidarity that younger listeners have with the political causes and the times of a lot of that era. Like if you think 70s, 80s music, there was so much happening politically that I think it just is imbued within that, in the lyrics, within the music, that people actually have something to like grasp onto. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's some sort of energy. If you think even of like the story of certain singers like Sinead O'Connor, all these people where they're sort of getting rediscovered by 15-year-olds now because they were doing something, saying something, standing up for something. And even if I think about loneliness, like your song that came out recently with the video by Alistair McClellan, when I watched that video, it was so contemporary and so even of this moment. Like if you're living in that town, in the video, that could be happening right now. But it also has this kind of timeless thing about being someone on the outside. But like this sense of longing and yearning and like trying to find your place and finding your sexuality and waking up and I don't know, and also just being young and rebelling and having like being cool in a way. But there's something so perfect about that I even think the new record is going to relate to younger people because it's, I don't know, I think ageism is so boring because we're all still the same people we were when we were kids. We're just probably more relaxed and more
hairier,
more purer in who we are. Maybe
ageism was built into rock music at the very beginning when Pete Townsend sang "Hope I Die Before I Get Old," and people it used to be fashionable to say, I would never trust anyone over the age of 30. It seemed impossibly old, and that's sort of gone. I think maybe. I sometimes think there should be more of a generation gap because I think generation gaps are quite creative and defining yourself against the generation above you, I actually think or your parents' generation is quite creative. I don't necessarily think that liking your parents' record collection is that creative unless it's got the Pet Shop Boys in it, which I guess I do like it.
Absolutely.
But so I don't know. Sometimes I think you need a bit more of attention to get stuff going.
How do you stay focused? Where do you get inspiration from on a daily basis when it comes to your art?
Focus.
No focus. It's always been unfocused. But what is it that you turn to? So say you feel like you want to create something and you might be like, well, what is this sound going to be? What are we referencing? I mean, politically, you guys have been really sort of connected, especially during the AIDS crisis and having that ability to make music to cover the trauma of what that was for everyone.
Well, that probably didn't seem political. That was just something one lived through. I mean, an enormous thing. It was interesting, the TV series It's a Sin, I think, brought the AIDS crisis to the belated attention of the heterosexual community. And I think the gay community is probably, like people after a war, wanted to forget about it because it was so grim. But as a lyricist, I was never afraid to write about it because it was happening around us.
Yes.
It was in one's life. And so obviously you write about anything that's in your life.
But did you ever have people at the time that were prejudiced saying, you can't write this, you shouldn't be saying this?
No, never.
Wow. Well, that's amazing, really, for the time.
Well, of course, wrote about it in a sort of slightly poetic way.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a song on our second album, and it's called "It Couldn't Happen Here," and it's about having a conversation with a friend in the early '80s about how this had happened in America, but it wasn't going to. He'd read it wasn't going to happen here in the same way, and then of course he got it and then died of it. And I wrote this song, and I sort of didn't want him to know it was about it. So the lyrics are quite obscure because I didn't want him to know I'd written about this. Well, I still wanted to express something about it. And it's a very beautiful song that we wrote, although we never met him, with Ennio Morricone, using a piece of his music. So the thing about pop music is, though, you can sort of say what you like in the verse, I think, as long as you've got a catchy chorus. So even Being Boring, which was written to be provocative in a way, with the idea of being boring as the title came first, because it came from some review we had saying, as usual, they're being boring. And I was just struck by how being boring had a sort of bouncy rhythm to it. But then it was, this friend of mine who died, it was sort of about our history, shared history together. But I mean, still got a catchy chorus, you know.
One of my favourite songs on the new record is Why Am I Dancing, which is the new single. It's been
It's not a single, actually.
Oh, it's not a single?
No, Dancing Stars is a single.
Oh, Dancing Stars, the single.
Yeah, it was played on radio today, yes.
Oh, how funny.
Yes.
Sorry, I misunderstood that.
Yes.
Anyway, I love Why Am I Dancing.
Yes.
Let's talk about Dancing Star as well, though, because that video, a reference to the dancer
Rudolf Nureyev.
Nureyev.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet him?
No.
Not knowingly.
Not knowingly.
Someone was on my dark. You might have brushed past him.
Yes.
Right, okay.
I think you'd have noticed, by the way. Although, funny enough, in the early 70s, when I first came to London, I had some friends from Newcastle who worked at the Royal Opera House, and one of them was a trainee ballet dancer. I think it was at the Royal Ballet School, and they were always talking about Rudy and Margot. So it was kind of in my consciousness, and ballet was always in my consciousness, because when I was a kid, we used to go to the Royal Ballet in Newcastle. I used to come to Newcastle, and when I was 9 years old, I wanted to be a ballet dancer.
Did you?
And I got Teach Yourself Ballet out of the local library, and I made my brother Simon, who's younger than me, do bar using a radiator.
Oh, a legend.
When I was about 10 years, about 7. Sadly, I realised rapidly I had no talent.
Pretty, I didn't know you then. My mum taught ballet.
There you go.
Might have been a marriage in heaven.
Did you do it as well then?
No.
You had no interest in ballet?
No. Well, a little tutu.
Well, what were you into then? Like, obviously music, but did you have any other sort of creativity or
Well,
like
architecture, no?
Oh, architecture.
Well,
right.
that was when I was a student.
But you were into buildings and design as a kid, or?
No, I used to like playing with Lego.
Yeah.
And we were moving house a lot, so I was used to imagine what the perfect house for us would be, which is why I sort of got interested in studying architecture. Never did get to build a house though, ironically.
Does your house now
Not giving
look
up. Not giving up though.
No, don't.
Just got to find a plot of land. That's what I've got to do.
But the house you live in now, is that sort of the house in your head as a kid you imagined?
No,
Not at all.
I've never lived in the perfect house.
What is the perfect house?
For me, it would be probably something like a Japanese ferroconcrete house, concrete, steel, glass, very minimal, nothing in it.
A courtyard.
Love courtyards. I've got to have room for a table tennis table.
What is it about Rudolf Nureyev, do you think, then, that he has become such a popular, iconic figure? Obviously, for what he achieved, but still now he's
Well, it's
relevant.
interesting because when we tell people what the song was about, people didn't know about him. So it's interesting how fame doesn't necessarily last. But there's, in the last few years, there was, I think we wrote the song, I think in 2020. I think I saw something on the television about him. And
There was a film about him, wasn't there?
And there's also a film.
Was it a documentary?
No, there is a film.
But it had someone who looked like
with Ray
Rudolph
Fiennes
Nureyev,
in.
didn't
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the story of him defecting is really interesting because he didn't plan to. So he was in the
Moscow Ballet, was it? Or?
I can't remember. He was in the Bolshoi, the Mariinsky Ballet, and they were touring Europe. And they came to Paris, and he hung out. This is 1961. He hung out with all the cool existentialist types. And when they get to the airport, they're going to fly to London. His KGB handlers don't like the way he's behaved, and they all get to the airport and they say, "Oh, Rudolph, you will not be flying to London. You'll be going back to Moscow to perform for Premier Khrushchev." And he realizes and there's two of these friends are there, and they inform the airport police, and then they go over to say goodbye to Rudolph, and they say, if you just go over to those two men and say, I want to leave, I want to stay in Paris, no one will be able to stop you. And so he does that. It's really quite dramatic. But when he went to the airport, he wasn't planning to defect.
Whoa.
Because the KGB lot spring this surprise. He knows if he goes back, he's going to be in trouble. He'll probably be expelled from Moscow. It'll be over.
Really?
And he's a very creative, ambitious person. And of course, when he comes to London, and for the rest of his career, he runs the Paris City Ballet and all sorts of things. And he choreographs a lot of ballets, does new choreography for Swan Lake and stuff. And he's an amazing character.
But could never see his family back in Russia.
No, they wouldn't let his. He does actually. Of course, Gorbachev comes along in the 80s, and in 1989, I think he goes to Russia, and he sees his mother, who's dying, and who doesn't actually say anything to him. It's interesting. He's not Russian. He's Tatar. Nureyev. He comes from the east. His mother was a Muslim, and so I don't know. Sometimes something just comes into your head. Chris sent over this piece of music. Actually, the funny thing is, people might wonder why it's got the sound of the sea and seagulls at the beginning. It's because Chris's demo, it was a song about going to the beach.
Really?
A man of simple pleasures.
It's very Blackpool. Actually, more like Benidorm, really, and about going to the beach, and. For some reason, it reminded me of Madonna, and that made me think of dancing. And then I thought of Dancing Star, and then I thought, Rudolph Nureyev. So it's funny how these things come together.
For me, great art is always people who've created a world of some kind, and it's often a world that you feel familiar with, but actually it's completely other and quite strange. And when I was listening to the new record, from the minute it begins, the orchestral parts of it, sonically, just take me somewhere else, which I don't feel like I've been to before, but it is equally very familiar. And it almost is this kind of like sonic architecture, like a space that I can escape to. And I've been listening to the record on loop, and I don't just listen to one track. I listen to the whole thing as a body of work, like as nine or 10 tracks. Like 10 tracks, yeah.
Of course, the good thing is it's not that long.
No, but it's not that long.
43 minutes. So you can go back to start again.
Yeah, and it's it's
important, that, I think. Though.
I've really kept thinking about escapism, and I think there's something about the orchestral, like the sonic quality of this album that is a Pet Shop Boys record to the core, but it's also something really new. And
I think we thought James Ford brought a lot to it because he likes analog synths and stuff. But
who is that?
James Ford produced the album.
Right.
He was originally in Semi Mobile Disco, and then he was in the Last Shadow Puppets with Alex Turner and then he's produced maybe a majority of the Arctic Monkeys albums. But also he works with like Jessie Ware and people like that. And he's written the orchestral arrangement with a friend of his. But when we were in the studio with him, he kept putting string ideas down, and he puts great.
Is it a real orchestra though?
It's a real orchestra.
That's what I thought, because I was going to say, I thought you meant for a minute he'd done it electronically.
I don't think we ever decided at any point to have an orchestra in every track. I think it was only when the album's finished, like, oh God, there's an orchestra in every track. Because sometimes we have an orchestra. We haven't an orchestra. You can just come off 3 albums at Stuart Price, where we've just done electronics.
Love him. Russell and I saw him at backstage at Madonna's recently. It was amazing.
Yes,
and he did his DJ set that night. He's so sweet. I love him.
He's great, and actually, it's funny. You'll get someone like Jessie Ware who's got an album half produced by James Ford and half produced by Stuart Price.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because they're both very clever. These producers nowadays are very clever, and because they have to be amazingly good at programming, manipulating sounds, but also very musical. They both play the guitar and stuff.
And why did you choose Tim Walker for the album cover? Like, I loved him so much. I know him very well, but I thought the photography was really striking with the light coming out of your mouth. It's such a beautiful, I don't know, it's just perfect with this moment in time. Such darkness.
Tim approached us to do a larger project he's doing for a gallery that we weren't actually that keen on doing, but it occurred to us we could ask him to use it as an excuse again to, as he'd walked into our lives, why not ask him to do the album cover? And he's a great guy. He's really, really great. And he had the idea of the light thing. We had a couple of other ideas, and he agreed to do the album cover. He shot it, and it's great. It sort of goes with the album. Don't even know why, really.
Well, there is a theatricality to it as well. There's something
but
quite...
it's not. I mean, his stuff is traditionally very theatrical. And he didn't do that for this.
No, I know, but the suits. There's something about the way you're both... I don't know. I found it's very particular. It's actually quite
like
film
Gilbert and
stilly,
George.
weirdly. Oh, yeah, there is a bit Gilbert and
We've
George.
always had the Gilbert and George thing. Again, it wasn't deliberate.
No.
We had photographs taken by Eric Watson. People said, "Oh, Gilbert and George." And
Well, we did ask them to work with us at
We
the
did.
very beginning. We knocked on the door.
Yeah.
And?
We actually got invited in, which was quite
But
something.
you guys haven't collaborated?
No, we asked them to do we were going to do a tour in 1986 that we then couldn't afford to do, so we didn't do it. But we decided to ask Gilbert and George. I think because people kept saying the Pet Shop Boys are the Gilbert and George of pop music. We went round. Of course, everyone knows where they live.
So we literally knocked on the door and they said, "Oh, you better." Well, what did we say?
Gilbert's the English one, I think. And Gilbert answered the door,
I think we probably said, "Would you do a poster for us?"
and he said, "Oh, we don't do anything
"With actually, it has a purpose."
that has a purpose."
With a purpose.
And then Chris bounded forward and said, "Oh, it doesn't have to have a purpose." And he said,
And say, "Oh, you better come in."
"You
then."
better come in then." And
It doesn't have a purpose. I'll come in. It doesn't matter. Great.
and they we saw all the ceramics on these little tables. Anyway, we never heard anything more.
Oh, that's so
And people
funny.
assumed that you were a couple for most of your career.
Certainly, Tom Watkins did at the beginning,
Right.
but he was
Well, he
disabused
wanted to
of
be
that.
thrown out of the band.
When he said, "Neil, everyone knows." You've done the story. We didn't used to tell the story. Now we tell it. Neil, everyone knows Chris is just the Banks. He's your boyfriend, and he doesn't do anything. And I said, well, Tom, one is not, and two, he writes music and tons of music. I said, for instance, we've just written this song called Suburbia, and Chris had a track, and then I put the words to it. He goes, "Oh, Neil."
Actually, the reason this came about in a recent interview was because Billy Ray Martin had just done an
Oh,
interview.
yes, it was.
And they were briefly
He
managed by
managed her,
Tom Watkins. Electribe 101 were briefly managed by Tom Watkins. And he wanted her thrown out of the group as well. She was the singer. So it was something you used to do, wasn't it?
That's wild. Are you going to tour this record?
Well, we're doing a tour, which we're now in year 3 of a Greatest Hits tour, but we're going to put the 2 singles, 2 new songs in, but we haven't been to various places with it yet, so we're carrying on doing that. And we're doing the Royal Opera House for 5
I was going to
nights.
say, which I saw in about
July.
2016 or so.
Yeah.
I always remember
That
being
was a different show, of course.
a different show,
Yeah.
but it was one of my favourite shows in pop music I've ever seen because it was the intimacy of it and just the extraordinary weird thing to be in the Royal Opera House listening to electro music. It was so brilliant.
It's a great venue. We do it really because it brings a different audience into there, and also our audience get to go to this massive plush opera house, which they wouldn't probably normally go to.
The best bit was Princess Julia in the bar afterwards at the after party, and I love her, and I've known her since I was about 18 or something. And I heard that you guys have actually just collaborated together.
Well, Tom Stefan has done a remix of this song, which is B-side. It's a good track though, called Party in the Blitz. And
Blitz Kids is this?
because of that's the Blitz in the war.
Oh.
But as there's the Blitz Club from the late 70s, and Julia used to go to that, and we sort of know Julia. Tom asked Princess Julia if she'd say something on it, and she just says a famous line I think Steve Strange used to say, "Would you let you in?" Or one of those evil queens monitoring the door of a club used to say, "Would you let you in?" And so she says that on it, and also Party in the Blitz. But she sounds great.
I actually did a duet with her when I was in my band, Tempo Shark. And the first time I ever met you was at someone's concert, and I can't remember whose it was. And I gave you one of my demo CDs.
I remember.
And
It wasn't,
you
it was
were
a finished CD.
Do you remember?
Oh, it was a finished CD, was it?
Finished CD.
Oh,
Do you
yeah,
remember
yeah.
it?
Oh, yeah, it was a Guy Sigsworth single. It's Better to Have Love. That's right. It had a flower on it. I don't know where we were. But anyway,
Sam was there.
yeah, I don't know what we were
Sam
doing.
Taylor Johnson.
Yes.
What's it been like working with Sam, actually? That's a good one.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask, because are you looking for people to stage your tour then now? Because you've worked with...
No, this one has been done. Actually, we started working on this tour in 2019, but then we had 2 years out. And Ez Devlin's done several of our tours.
Oh, I love her.
But Ez wasn't available because she was going to be doing something else, but she didn't happen in the end. Anyway, in the in the meantime, we asked this guy, Tom Scott.
Oh, yes, Tom. I know
Yeah,
Tom.
set designer.
Yeah.
He just did Cabaret
He did Cabaret.
with Self-Esteem.
Yes,
I
that's
love
right.
Tom.
I did Constellations with him.
Oh,
Did
he's
you?
so
Designed that in the West
talented.
End, yeah.
He's brilliant.
I saw the play about the poisoning of Litvinenko at the Old Vic, and I liked the design, and I said maybe we should approach this guy. And anyway, and then we worked, and then was the lockdown, and then we came back. We simplified it, crucially, and actually worked out really, really well. He's done a great job. And so we're still touring that show.
One of my favourite moments in Pet Shop Boys history is Home and Dry, the song, initially.
Yes.
And then the video, which you did with Wolfgang Tillmans.
Yes.
Which, I don't know if you can just talk about working with Wolfgang and your friendship with him, because he's a previous Talk Art guest, but also somebody that I think is such
hero.
like world maker through his art.
And music.
And
because
music.
you guys have worked with
Yeah,
him collaboratively
exactly.
through his
We've
music.
remixed a couple of his tracks, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, actually, he gives Chris credit for starting to make music.
Really?
Yeah, we were at a dinner in Berlin for that woman that you like.
He's against him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I love her.
That woman that you like.
Well, actually, we saw.
I knew who he meant.
Yeah. She's sort of.
She's a character.
There's some bars, and you think, what was that? What's she called again?
He's against him.
You think, what's that again? Because she just walked past.
She was married to...
Gerhard Richter.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, she's quite something, isn't she?
Yeah.
Anyway, we were at dinner for that, and I was sat next to Wolfgang, and we got talking about music. I said, I don't know why you don't just... Because it's so simple. You know, Neil can do it now.
I mean, even Neil can do it.
Neil can do it. Anyone can do it. It's great.
What have you started?
Just get, program gets it, and
You told him what came to buy something.
I did, but I think he'd done music before, though. Really,
He had in the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So his new album's quite good, isn't it?
It's really good. And
Yeah.
the video you guys made together...
No, he made the video.
Yeah, I know, but it was
This is
for
all
your
the
song,
Rats
though.
on the Underground.
I know, but I love
that
yes.
one. Yeah.
It was Mice, though, wasn't it? Mice. in the Underground.
Black Mice.
Yeah.
They're so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love the little...
The video is meant to be something else. It was literally a completely different idea.
Do you know that was shown in Selfridges in a purpose-built
As no one was going to show it on the television.
Yeah.
We got
Why?
Selfridges to show it.
Because it was mice and
Well,
rats.
Too weird. The record company was horrified. Too weird.
Yeah.
I think I bought the DVD
In
of
those
it.
days, MTV was a thing, and they wouldn't show it.
Yeah.
And
Is that quite upsetting, or are you a bit like, fuck 'em?
we're a bit like fuck 'em, but it's sort of annoying. Actually, the reason they wouldn't show it is because it's shot on video, not on. If it was shot on film, I mean, I always thought it was a really cute video.
I love that video. I think it's a genius moment.
But if it had been shot on film and sort of lit like a Disney film, I wouldn't have loved it probably. But it was a new thing as well for us. It looks very Wolfgang, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
He also came up with the album title for
That album release.
release. That was his album title.
We were going
really?
to call.
We were going to call it something terrible.
We were going to call it Home.
And he went, "Oh, you don't want to do that.
You should just call it something like Release. We said,
Great, that's it. That's that
Great.
done then."
also, Disco 3 was originally called London Berlin. And he said, no, but surely it's remixes. It should be Disco 3 because we've done this series
He
of
has
Disco
a,
albums.
he has a real logic, doesn't
He's
he?
got a
He
real
does.
logic.
He's a
Yes.
good thinker.
Just in the way he
Yes.
works in his practice anyway, there's a lot of logic with the sizes he
No,
works in and the
yeah.
format and everything.
Yeah, I wouldn't want him as my lecturer at university. I'd feel
No, he'd be very good,
challenged.
though.
I'd feel
He
too
would be
challenged
very
by it
good.
all.
Yeah, well, I mean, he does probably do that.
Do you go and look at art a lot?
Yes.
Where do you have regular galleries? I know obviously Carl Friedman Gallery you're very loyal
Obviously.
to, obviously, but are there
I
like
haven't been there.
You have been to Margate, though, haven't you? You came to Margate.
I've not
I've been to Margate several
Yeah,
times.
yeah.
But
I thought you had.
ages though.
Oh, no, not for ages, yeah.
are there
you were touring,
spaces
though?
or commercial galleries or certain
Yes.
programs that you follow?
I mean, we knew a lot of artists right in the reasonably early days of the Brit art thing.
Yeah.
So we knew Jay Joplin, White Cube.
Yeah,
when
of course.
when it was just a little room. Sadie Coles. And we sort of would know from the Grouch show. We used to know Damien Hirst a bit, actually. Gary Hume, for instance.
So the YBAs.
The YBA. Sam.
And Tracy.
Tracy, of course, yeah. And we got Sam to do our show at the Savoy Theatre in 1997.
Yeah.
And she had the brilliant idea of this party on two screens, two sofas, and we leave the sofas and come off and walk onto the stage. And then at the end of the first half, we walk back onto the sofas. And that was it. And then the second half, it was the same thing again. It was but also we filmed it live because the music was digital, so we could film it to a click track. the second half, we had to reshoot the first half. And then, so by the time we did the second half, everyone was actually completely pissed. And everyone saw Pauline Daly, who works.
Yes, Sadie Cole.
Yeah.
She's an amazing dancer.
Johnny
I heard that.
Shankid is in it.
I think everyone was phoning up, weren't they, afterwards? So you can't.
Jay Jopling's in it. I think they're
Is that
all.
available on YouTube? Is it? Can you see that?
It will be
Yeah,
soon.
it
Is it?
No, we put out a DVD. Yeah.
Where do you look now then for artists? Do you feel like you?
I go to sort of young galleries as well. There's a gallery called the Artist's Room.
Oh yeah.
I bought a few things from them.
Yeah, and they have a great Instagram as well.
They do have a great Instagram.
Yeah.
I'm always been a very haphazard buyer of artworks.
And you collect Derek Jarman's work as well, don't
No,
you?
I only have one Derek Jarman. I've got one painting. One of those very thick oil paintings
the
of
Dungeness
Dungeness. That's a beautiful painting. When I moved into my house just right before lockdown, I had some friends came and hung the art, and I realised the situation when they'd hung. I said, "Wow, all the art in this room is by women."
Oh, and you hadn't realised.
Yeah, it's like when I went to the queer art show at the Tate Gallery, the Tate Britain, and I thought, "Well, I've got a queer art collection. Who knew?" Because I've got. Well, I used to have a load of Simeon Solomons, which I sold actually, but Keith Thorne and people like that, or modern artists like Paul P, for instance.
Yeah.
Elijah Berger is an artist I really, really like. I don't know if you know Elijah Berger.
Yeah.
You had a show in Britain before, and I've got about 7 paintings by him.
Paul P's having a real resurgence.
Paul P, yeah. I never buy things as an investment. I don't really know how to go about that, to be honest. But I am a bit of a haphazard collector. I buy things because I like them on the spur of the moment.
When Carl and I came to your house in Kent, we left, and in the car we said that's the first time we've been to a collector's house where it actually feels like a proper collection, like it's what you would hope as a gallerist would be, because it felt like you actually loved everything you lived with. And you had a story behind every single work. It wasn't like, oh, here's a work by that person. It was like an identikit thing that I'd never seen a collection like that before, and it was yours, and it was a really beautiful thing.
Oh. You've never seen it. I can't understand that. You've never seen. That's what people.
Something with personality.
You sort of buy stuff, then you get rid of stuff. So I got rid of stuff because I bought a big house in Durham, and I sold it, and I got rid of a load of stuff because I didn't have room for it. And so I've kept the ones I like, and so it's good to edit it down, and that's when it probably starts to feel more personal, because it's the choices that have been made twice have been bought, and then
you're
then they've been
extra
kept.
sure.
Yeah.
They must be like diary entries though. Like I always find, because I've been collecting this for so many years now, that I look at a painting and go, well, that's when I did the History Boys on Broadway, or I bought that photograph when I did that play there, and they become like moments of your own like legacy.
Well, I've got paintings I've had for a long time, and also I've got paintings that I sold that I sort of still. I had a fantastic painting by the arts and crafts painter, not pre-Raphaelite, Walter Crane, who also designed wallpaper and stuff. It was called La Primavera, and it was this beautiful, just a woman picking flowers in a field of daffodils. And it was a very beautiful painting, and I sold it at Christie's or somewhere. And when I moved, and I still miss it.
Mm-hmm. And so you regret selling it?
I don't regret selling it, because I don't know where it would go now, but I still miss it. I can still remember when I had a house, another house I had this enormous Victorian painting of the flight from Egypt, the Holy Family leaving or arriving in Egypt, flight into Egypt, arriving in Egypt. And what was interesting is it was the artist had a big success with this painting, so he did a copy of it, but during the copy he died. So it was unfinished. So it was this Victorian realistic painting, but it was unfinished. So it was very interesting. And I sold it.
Looks better.
Probably looked better, because actually the original there's a gallery in Bournemouth, I know from playing there on tour, called the Russell Coates Gallery, and they've actually got the original one. So whenever we play in Bournemouth, I go to the Russell Coates Gallery and see the Flight into Egypt, the painting, the original one that they've got. And I kind of it's an enormous painting. It took up a whole wall. And but I sort of miss it. I used to have a painting of right at the beginning I used to collect Victorian paintings, and I bought this big work, Frieze by Pablo Bronstein.
Yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant.
From Herald Street Gallery.
Yeah, at Frieze though.
Yeah.
Anyway, by the time these things get delivered, it's forever. It takes forever. Anyway, in my house in Durham, this enormous lorry arrived, And I thought, God, why is the lorry so big? And then I see the work. And I had this space above the stairs with this big Victorian painting of King Lear. And I said to the art moving people, I said, well, you better take that down, stick it in your van, put it in storage, and hang this one up instead. And it occurred to me I'd never Googled the painting of King Lear. And it turned out it had been commissioned by Isambard Kingdom Brunel, the famous bridge builder. And he'd commissioned in his house in Bristol a Shakespeare room, and they'd been commissioned for it. And I'd never ever looked it up. I was quite pleased it then sold for quite a lot of money. But it was a beautiful... I missed that painting too, it's funny.
Did you keep the Pablo Bronstein?
Pablo Bronstein, yes.
And do you actually look at the work a lot then that you live with?
Well, when you live with art, you look at it all the time, actually. And also, you sort of fiddle, you kind of move it around a bit. In my house in London, I'm always moving the art around.
I do exactly the
Do you
same.
live with art, Chris?
Always.
Always.
I haven't got the collector gene at all. I've never had it. So for a long time, I had a flat in London which was very minimal, so it couldn't take any art. Now I've got a bigger sort of Georgian house, and you just need to put stuff on the walls. So for me, it's a bit of a chore.
It's so I feel envious.
But
of
I would
in some
actually
ways.
prefer to live
I know
in
what
a
you
house
mean.
with nothing.
Really?
Yeah, that's my goal.
But I can't. I just can't. Like my brother's completely
me-
minimal. No need for anything, and I just have stuff and acquiring.
I've just never. I mean, we know lots of people like
Well, three. You're in a minority in this room.
No,
because all
no,
three
I
of us
know, I know.
are hoarders, collectors,
I
need
don't
stuff.
really-
Oh,
I don't really like stuff. That's why I love Spotify. Don't need to own anything. It's just there. It's brilliant.
See,
In
I've
the
still got
ether.
all my CDs and DVDs, and I can't get rid of them.
I'm about to get rid of my pop CDs. Well, they're all on Spotify. I've been through them, by the way. I've kept rarities. But
I've kept my vinyl, but that's because a lot of it's not available on Spotify.
I've got my Smash Hits era vinyl collection of 12-inch records, 12-inch singles, because they're not necessarily available. Having said that, I never play them.
So incredible that you were deputy editor of Smash Hits magazine, then you had a pop career, and you were on the cover of Smash Hits magazine.
And that, by the way, was all done within a year. I got a fake Smash Hits cover in March 1985. And in January, so less than a year, January 1986, Chris and I on the cover of Smash Hits.
So wild.
That's manifestation, isn't it?
Unfortunately, I've lost the fake cover. I don't know where it is. It must be somewhere. I can't find it.
Well, you won't have thrown it away.
No,
No, you won't have thrown it. You would have done. You would have thrown it away.
Shred.
I'm
I've
very
shredded
much-
everything.
I'm very much an archivist.
Yeah, same.
Oh, you are. You absolutely
I'm
are.
really an archivist, yeah.
Neil knows where everything is. If you would say, what's this email from 10 years ago about this,
Just
you'd
look it
find
up.
it like that.
Would you?
My
Yeah,
file
whereas
system-
I never delete any.
I
emails.
select all and delete.
I never do that.
It's-
I've got a friend who gets a text message and they read it and go, read that and delete it. And I'm like, why are you deleting it? He said,
Oh, no,
read
I'll
it.
delete it.
I'm like, what do you
I
mean? Mine go back like 10 years. I
Delete
can go,
everything, shred everything.
It is
get rid of
fascinating, the conversations that go on.
yes.
It is a weird thing, that.
Yeah. We've got one, so when we first met and the way we were communicating with each
Our
other.
language is so weird.
We've been so flowery with each other and trying to show off about,
Yes.
how we could communicate and talk about art with each other. Now it's
We
just like, oh, shut up, you slag.
Now we're like, block. I feel like I've emailed you a lot. I think I emailed you when certain music comes out that I'm obsessed with. And then,
Yes, you have. Not really. A
few
lot, but you have
times. Oh.
occasionally, yes.
Get ready, it's coming. If you could collaborate with any artist for album art or to direct shows, living or alive, who would it be?
Well, for ages you wanted to collaborate with Bruce Nauman.
And also Robert Wilson.
Yeah,
oh, Robert
wow.
Wilson's amazing.
Wanted to collaborate with us.
Yeah. But he wanted us to, what was it?
He phoned me up. It was through Rufus Wainwright, actually, because Rufus did Shakespeare sonnets with them in a show, which I'm astonished has never come to like the Globe Theatre, because it's a brilliant show. He wanted us to do the Iliad for the National Theatre of Greece. And I said, well, isn't there anyone Greek? And I said, no, we're actually doing a new album. And we were doing the album, I think, yes. And he said, well, you could do what Lou did, Lou Reed. You could do what Lou did, it just became his new album. I said, yeah, it doesn't work like that with
Yeah,
us.
but it was like 4 weeks.
You had a 4-week deadline.
What appealed to me personally was going to live in
Oh, I love the idea.
Athens.
Just that there wasn't enough time.
and I thought we'll just get slagged off because they've chosen us, not some
Right,
Greek
right.
people.
Yeah.
And what about contemporary?
Contemporary. I mean, we have done over the years, Derek Jarman, Sam Taylor-Wood, as she was then.
Zaha Hadid,
Wolfgang, Zaha.
Yeah.
Of course.
What did you do with Zaha?
Zaha did the nightlife tour.
Oh, yes.
Zaha was amazing. She lived in this flat in sort of South Kane or somewhere, and you'd go around there, and she was very imperious. She always reminded me of, not that I knew her, of Catherine the Great or something like that. Very imperious. I always remember our tour manager. We went for a meeting. The tour manager's always trying to bring it back to reality. The tour manager think how many trucks it's going to take to. That's their job, And he said, "Oh, you can try this." She goes, "Oh, so you're the designer now." So you're the designer now. And Ivan, God, I felt really sorry. I felt sorry for him actually. Yeah. And she was like that to her staff actually. Oh, why you say that? It's stupid, And she was anyway. We loved her though. She was great. I remember she came to see the show that she designed at Brighton. She was all flushed from dancing in the audience. It was great.
Wearing
Issey Miyake.
Please. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Now I don't think we have a contemporary
You
artist.
should work with Rini Matic. If you're looking at, they're a photographer. Their work's brilliant. I feel like it would really work with the same aesthetic that Tillmans works in, and the same aesthetic that Derek Jarman did. It's the state of England again.
Yeah,
sort of
and very much.
You see, we tend to work with people for shows. So we did just collaborate with Tom Scott.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have done a load of shows with There's Devlin.
So and your video with Alistair McClellan.
Alistair McClellan.
I love Alistair.
Yeah, we love.
Amazing photographer, and I was actually really impressed in the video. Like
he did it, by the way.
It's so specific to his vision.
That's his story of that song, not ours.
It's great.
It's his. It's completely him. So whereas you don't really get to work with the painter. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Rini, they're a photographer.
Yeah,
you should check it out.
I will do.
They've been on Talk Art as well. They're very, very good. All right, well, we're going to get to our final questions now, guys. You've been amazing.
I thought that was it.
We've got 3 questions that we ask every guest that comes on.
Yes.
The first one is, if you guys could do an art heist, I think it's going to be easier for you, Neil. You could steal any artwork in the world for yourself. What would it be and why?
It's going to be good, isn't it?
You can steal a building, Chris, if you want to steal architecture.
I would probably steal a sort of Rembrandt late self-portrait.
Really?
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Have you seen them in real life?
I've seen a show of them. I mean, they're just amazingly philosophical paintings.
Oh, actually, I've got an idea.
Go on.
Amazingly.
Yeah.
I quite like Rothko's stuff.
Ooh. Go on.
Well, I went where was it? A room full of them. It was really good.
At the Tate. You're talking about
It was probably the Tate.
Yeah,
I could have
series that were created for the hotel.
Room.
Yeah. Nice. Have the whole room.
It could be the table tennis room.
Yes, you have the table tennis and you have your Rothkos and make sure the ball doesn't fly off into one of them.
Mine man Rothkos.
That's like when you play table tennis on your own and they make you lift up the table. You could just play. Have you? But you could just play it against the Rothko.
Yeah, I think it's
an artwork
Seagram's building or something, wasn't it? That he made the commission for, and then he didn't want anyone sitting around eating them and use them as decoration, so he didn't allow them to use them.
Yes, that's right, it was.
The other question we ask every guest is, what is your favourite colour?
Blue.
Blue. Well, what came to my head was blue. Yeah.
Oh,
really?
You both like blue?
Why blue?
It should really be red, but blue is the answer.
And why blue?
Why should it be red, though?
Arsenal.
Oh, God, all right. Yeah, great. Great.
It's the first time football's ever been mentioned on Talk Art. Probably, yeah.
Probably.
Although we should really do an episode about that.
The last time.
No, there's Oof magazine and gallery. I love them. I want them to come on.
We've talked about them at Tottenham.
They're in Tottenham. Sorry.
You haven't had David Beckham on the show?
No.
Tottenham is a Tottenham rival of Arsenal.
Oh, come on, you know that. We saw you in a play about football.
I took you to that.
It was acting.
You mean you were just acting? I thought that was really you as well.
The pass. We went to that and we had dinner afterwards, didn't we?
We did, that's right. We remember that.
We
went
next
Nick
door.
Hackner.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
That's
exactly.
right.
Oh, my God. Wait. Why is blue your favourite colour?
It's blue, I don't know. It just is.
Okay.
Derek Jarman's blue.
Oh, Derek Jarman's blue.
Yeah, that was Yves Klein blue.
Mm-hmm.
Yves Klein blue. That's a nice blue, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what Yves Klein... Do you know, I thought Yves Klein for many years was a woman.
Oh, really? Because of Eve.
I just thought
guess,
Eve was a woman's name.
Did you feel the same about Eve Saint Laurent?
No, I didn't really. No, it's funny though. Isn't it? I've never thought of that. I think Yves Saint Laurent's name is a logo.
Yeah.
Whereas Eve Klein, I probably hadn't seen written down.
Right.
So I think I thought it was EVE.
What is the best advice you've ever received in terms of your work and your art? And your music?
Stop.
No. I don't think we ever got any advice, have we?
Have we ever listened to any? Have we ever listened to any advice?
Don't listen.
Probably not. I do always think that if everyone has the same reaction to something,
They're probably all wrong.
they're probably all right.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Yeah. I know the piece of advice Chris often quotes, though, which I do like, is Andy Warhol saying, which I was arguing against what I've just said, if everyone hates what you're doing, keep doing it because you're obviously doing something right. Well, I do agree with that. And there are times when we have done that. If you look at some of the imagery we've produced, like when we did the Nightlife album, we wore these strange wigs and big eyebrows and stuff. It was very unfriendly. And something the Pet Shop Boys have never done is necessarily make it easy, particularly in our shows. Our show, you always go through the difficult bit to get to the fun bit. And I sort of think we feel that somehow represents the way life works as well.
I think Andy Warhol said if you just keep working, by the time people criticise it, you're already on to the next thing.
He's probably right about that as well, yeah.
Did you ever meet him?
No, but I once was at the nightclub in New York in 1983 called Area, my favourite nightclub of all time. Area, they used to redress it every month, and they had living artworks and stuff. And I was there with a friend of mine, Kimberly Leston. We were launching the American Smash Hits, and we used to go out every single night. And I turned around to ask her what she wanted to drink, and Andy Warhol was standing there. And he just obviously come from some uptown party. He was in a dinner jacket with jeans, And I was I thought, wow, that is just amazing.
You can never get enough of Andy Warhol. Read every book. Have you read that?
Really diaries, and everything.
The diaries,
Did you like the Netflix?
Book? Yes, that was
I
great.
liked it, but it had an elegiac quality I don't really feel the diaries have. I have the Andy Warhol diaries by my bed.
Same.
And if I wake up and I'm worrying about something,
Click
do the
through.
same thing.
Click through.
It's so big, you can just open any page at random,
Yep.
and then Bianchi's bitching about Bianca Jagger.
Well, you find the date of the day we are now, and then look at the date and what he was doing then, and go, what was he doing then?
I just open it at random, and I read 2 pages. That's all it takes, and it's reset my brain completely.
That's the magic of Andy Warhol.
That's the magic of Andy Warhol. Yeah.
Well, this has been wonderful, guys. Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Was that the 3 questions?
That's the 3
I don't
questions.
think you answered any of them very well. But
We have
they're
loved
wonderful.
spending this hour and a bit with you. The new album, Pet Shop Boys, nonetheless, is out now. That is right now, today. You can download it, stream it, buy it on vinyl. You can do all kinds of things.
And Dancing Star, you can download as well.
Dancing Star is a
Yeah,
music
single.
video,
Yes.
yes, and it's out
But
now.
being us, it's
And also
a 6-track
Loneliness.
single.
I love the Loneliness video. You can see that too. And there's also other videos coming, but you have to wait and see what those are.
And your website is very, very good.
Thank you. Well, we see it as an archive.
It is. It truly
It's
is.
literally like down to the day. It's like on this day in
There's a
1997.
guy who does a website
Love that.
called Pet Shop Boys Song by Song Commentary, and he does the history thing, and we have a link from his website. to
It's
ours.
really good. I love that.
I saw an amazing thing about. Obviously, I'm obsessed with Derek Jarman as you are, but at the Suede concert, Derek Jarman doing the speech at the beginning.
He did, yes. I was there, yes.
Well, you were in the background, yeah.
Yeah,
so-
that's right,
And it's
yeah.
so beautiful.
Chrissy Hine was there.
1991, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he wasn't very well actually.
No.
Yeah. Oh, that was. Yeah, he was just starting to get kind of ill, seriously ill. He's still another 3 years together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Gosh, Derek.
Well,
yes.
Thank you so much for coming on Talk Art.
Thanks for having us.
It's one of
Yeah,
our,
that was my
it's a-
first podcast, everyone.
It is.
And probably my last.
Well, we are very grateful.
That's what Neil's dad said, yeah.
So enjoy it.
We'll be back very soon. Thanks for listening.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
You've been listening to Talk Art with Robert Diamond and Russell Tovey.
Follow us on Instagram @TalkArt, where you can view images of all artworks discussed in today's episode, with music by Jack Northover.
Subscribe to Talk Art at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Acast, or wherever it is that you get your podcasts.
Give us a rating and write us a comment. Thanks for listening.